I have lived long enough to know that the worst moments in life don't announce themselves. They don't knock on the door. They don't give you time to prepare. They just happen, and suddenly your whole world is something you barely recognize. My name is Gerald Whitfield. I am 58 years old, and for 30 years I worked as an insurance investigator. I have seen people lie, cheat, manipulate, and scheme in ways that would make your head spin. I thought I had seen it all. I thought there was nothing left in this world that could truly shock me. That I was wrong. It was a Tuesday morning in late October. The kind of morning where the air smells clean and the light is soft and golden. The kind of morning you think is going to be ordinary. I rolled over in bed and reached for my wife, Dorothy, the way I have every morning for 35 years. Her side was cold and empty. That was the first sign, though I didn't know it yet, that I heard something from down the hallway. Muffled, soft, the kind of sound you almost convince yourself you didn't hear. But I'm a man who spent 3 decades noticing the things other people ignore, and something in me went very still. I got up. I walked toward the bathroom, and when I pushed open that door, I felt my heart fall straight through the floor. Dorothy was on her knees on the cold tile, her hands pressed against her bare scalp, shaking. Not screaming, not wailing, just shaking the way a person shakes when the pain is so deep it can't even find a voice anymore. Her beautiful, long silver hair, every single strand of it, was scattered across the floor around her like it had simply fallen from the sky. Awe. Even now, all these months later, writing this out, I feel that same terrible tightness in my chest that a hair clipper sat on the vanity counter. Still warm to the touch. Next to it was a handwritten note. I picked it up with trembling fingers and read it, and I swear to you, my blood ran cold. Mom looks too old for the wedding video. Fixed it for more views. Please like this video and listen to my story till the end, and let me know which city you're listening from. That way, I can see how far my story has traveled. This is a story that needs to be heard. Dorothy's hair was not just hair. She had been growing it for over 30 years, since the day her mother passed away. She had made a quiet, private promise that she would never cut it. It was the last living connection she had to her mama's memory. Every morning when she braided it, she was still somehow in conversation with the woman who raised her, and now it was on the floor. Every strand of it, cut off and discarded like it was nothing. I knelt down beside my wife. I didn't say anything right away because there were no words big enough for that moment. I just put my arm around her shaking shoulders and held her while she trembled. This woman who had never once in 35 years of marriage asked me for anything she didn't truly need. But even through the shock, even through the grief that was already flooding my chest, the investigator in me was quietly waking up. That I looked around the bathroom with eyes I had spent decades training. Everything was too neat. The towels were folded perfectly. The window was cracked at its usual angle. The soap dish was exactly where it always was. This was not the scene of a sudden, frantic act. This was staged. This was planned. And then I saw it. Dorothy's phone, lying face down on the vanity. When I turned it over, the screen lit up. A video recording app was open. The live stream icon showed it had ended less than 15 minutes ago. The viewer count was already climbing toward 50,000. The hidden camera eye set Dorothy's phone down very carefully, the way you set down something dangerous. Then I started looking again, slower this time. Behind the tissue box on the shelf, I found it. A small wireless camera, tucked perfectly out of sight but angled to capture the mirror. The power cable was threaded behind the stack of folded towels. This wasn't some impulsive thing our daughter-in-law Melissa had done in a moment of terrible judgment. This was a setup. She had come into our bathroom, installed a hidden camera, and planned every detail. Dorothy looked at me with panic in her eyes when she saw the camera in my hand. "Gerald," she whispered, "please. They can't show this to everyone." I removed the battery from that camera and slipped it into my pocket. I locked the bathroom door from the inside, as if I could undo what had already been seen by thousands of strangers online. "You don't have to go out there," I told her, my voice as steady as I could make it. "Let me handle this." I wrapped my wife in her thickest robe and helped her back to our bedroom. As I closed the door behind me, I could hear her start to cry. Not loud, not dramatic, Just those soft, broken sobs that somehow pierce you deeper than any screaming ever could. I stood in that hallway for a moment with my fist against the wall, and I breathed. Because I knew if I walked down that hallway without getting myself right, I would do something I couldn't take back. But what I discovered next, hidden in plain sight, was so much worse than I ever imagined. And it was about to change everything. For Dorothy, for our family, and for thousands of people we had never even met. Stay with me. You need to hear this. I walked slowly down the hallway toward the guest room where our son Marcus and his new wife Melissa were staying. I could hear voices through the cracked door. Marcus's voice was low, nervous. Melissa's laugh was bright and sharp, the laugh of someone who was excited about something. It might be a bit much, Marcus was saying. Relax, Melissa said. Old people always forgive family. Besides, we need this. The MLM isn't bringing in enough, and you know how much we owe on those property investments. I stood there in the hallway and listened to my son agree that his mother's pain was a worthwhile price to pay for social media engagement, that I walked away before they saw me. In my work, I always learned to let people think they were still safe, right up until the moment they weren't. You don't tip your hand early. You build your case first. I went to my home office, the same room where I had spent hundreds of hours over 30 years building fraud cases. I sat down at my desk, and I got to work. What I found Melissa's social media presence was far larger than I had realized. 200,000 followers on Instagram, nearly 500,000 on her video channel. She sold an anti-aging supplement line through a multi-level marketing company, and her target audience was women over 50, the same demographic as my wife. That I dug deeper. And the deeper I dug, the colder I felt. Melissa had been using Dorothy's image in her promotional materials for months without her knowledge. There were fake testimonials attributed to my wife about how these miracle supplements had transformed her life and made her feel 40 again. Dorothy had never taken a single one of those supplements. She didn't even know her name was being used. Then I found the business registration documents. Melissa had listed Dorothy as a business partner and official testimonial provider without Dorothy's knowledge or consent. She had been borrowing my wife's 30 years of teaching and community work, her good name, her reputation, to give credibility to a product that had no real results to offer anyone. My hand was shaking slightly as I kept clicking. I kept having to remind myself to breathe. Because every new thing I found was another layer of how deliberate and cold this had been. Melissa wasn't just exploiting Dorothy. She had a private coaching group where for $299 a month, she taught other influencers how to do the same thing to their own elderly relatives. The course materials talked about identifying emotionally vulnerable family members and creating authentic breakthrough moments for maximum viewer engagement. Dorothy wasn't a grandmother to this woman. She was case study number 1. If you're still with me, please share this. Not for views, but because somewhere out there, someone else's mother is being used the same way. Keep listening. I started making phone calls. I worked through the numbers I found in Melissa's client database. Most went to voicemail, but I reached 3 women who had purchased supplements after seeing Dorothy's fake testimonials. Margaret, 73 years old, a widow from across the state. Oh, Dorothy seems like such a sweet lady, she told me, her voice so warm and trusting it hurt to hear. I ordered the full 6-month package because she looked so healthy. I haven't seen any results yet, but Melissa said it takes time. She had spent $1,200. 68-year-old Carol had paid $800 for supplements and another $400 for personal coaching calls. I kept asking when I could talk to Dorothy directly, she said quietly. There was always an excuse. Ruth, 71, had spent nearly $2,000 and her health had gotten worse, not better, after taking the supplements. I tried to ask for a refund, Ruth told me softly. She said all sales were final. I documented every conversation, every receipt, every false claim. By the time I was done, I had enough to put Melissa away for years, but I didn't just want legal consequences. I wanted something more complete than that. I wanted accountability. I wanted the same audience she had built by exploiting my wife to be the audience that watched her answer for it. I had a plan. And in 4 hours, there was going to be a wedding. What happened at that wedding has now been seen by over 10 million people. And it all started with one phone call I made from my home office. I'll tell you everything. Keep listening. My first call was to an old partner from my working years, James, who now handled fraud cases for the state attorney's office. I told him I had evidence of elder abuse and financial fraud, that it was family, and that it was complicated. He didn't ask a lot of questions. We had known each other long enough for that. "Bring me what you've got," he said. "We'll look at it." "There's something else," I said. "There's a wedding in 4 hours. I think they're planning more content at the ceremony. I need you and your team to be ready to move." There was a pause. "Gerald, if you're planning something at this wedding, nothing illegal. Nothing that compromises your case. I just need documentation and presence." I called Adult Protective Services next. Explained the situation, the fraud, the false testimonials, the exploitation of vulnerable seniors. They were slow to escalate until I told them this wasn't an isolated incident, that I had found evidence of a coaching program teaching other people to do the same thing. That changed the conversation. Then I made one more call to a news reporter named Claire who had covered several of my bigger fraud cases back in my working days. "I have a story for you," I said. "Elder abuse meets social media exploitation. It's happening today, and if you want to be there when it breaks open, meet me at Riverside Manor at 2 p.m. "Gerald, what are you planning?" "Justice, and the kind of story your viewers will be talking about for a long time. Trust me on this one." Getting Dorothy ready, I went back to our bedroom. Dorothy was sitting up against the headboard, her hands folded in her lap. She looked tired in a way that goes bone deep, the exhaustion of someone who has been betrayed by someone they loved. That I sat down next to her. I reached into the closet and found a silk scarf, a deep burgundy, one she had owned for years and never quite found the occasion for. I took my time wrapping it around her head, carefully, the way you do something when you want every motion to carry meaning. I didn't hide what had been done to her. But it gave her back something, some small piece of her dignity. "Are you ready?" I asked. She looked at me for a long time. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to make sure this never happens to another family," I said. "And I'm going to make sure the people who did this to you are held accountable in front of the same audience they used against you." She took a slow breath. She reached up and touched the scarf. And then she nodded. After 35 years of marriage, she knew that look on my face. She knew when I had made up my mind completely that if someone has ever used your trust against you, or used the trust of someone you love, then you know the exact feeling I'm describing right now. That cold, quiet fury. That absolute determination. Keep listening, because this gets better. Arriving at the venue of the wedding was at a beautiful venue called Riverside Manor. When Dorothy and I arrived, the place was buzzing with energy, guests in their finest clothes, flowers everywhere, the kind of cheerful chaos that surrounds any wedding. Melissa was already in full performance mode. She was wearing a wireless microphone and holding her phone up to capture content, greeting guests with a wide, practiced smile of someone who understands that every moment is an opportunity for engagement. She had positioned 2 of her followers near the entrance as amateur cameramen, framing every arrival. Marcus spotted us almost immediately. I could see the relief and the anxiety fighting for control of his face. He was glad we'd come. He was terrified of what I might do. He should have been more specific about which thing he was afraid of. I spotted Claire from the news station, setting up quietly in the back with her camera crew. Melissa noticed them too, assumed they were there to cover her dream wedding moment, and actually walked over to introduce herself. "This is going to be such an inspiring story," Melissa told Claire brightly. "From struggling newlyweds to social media success, all because of family support." Claire just smiled and didn't correct her. I watched from across the room and felt the quiet satisfaction of a man whose pieces were all in place. And then the ceremony began. And when it came time for speeches, Melissa handed me the microphone with a big smile, expecting a heartfelt father-in-law moment she could clip for her highlight reel. She had no idea what was about to happen. Neither did the 150,000 people watching her live stream. Stay with me. The ceremony was beautiful, in a way that all weddings are beautiful when you don't know what you know. I sat in the front row with Dorothy. She held my hand through the vows and didn't look away from Marcus, even when her eyes got wet. She still loves him. Even now, that's the kind of woman she is. Melissa kept glancing at her phone to check the live stream comments. even during her own wedding ceremony. Even while Marcus was reading his vows to her, the viewer count was climbing. She was performing in real time. When the vows were done and the minister pronounced them married and the room erupted in applause, I watched Marcus kiss his bride and felt something crack quietly inside me. Not for Melissa. For my son, who had made choices that were going to follow him for a very long time. The microphone during the reception speeches, Melissa stepped up first because of course she did. She talked about new beginnings, about family, about how grateful she was to share this special day with all her followers online. And then she turned toward us with that bright, camera-ready smile. I especially want to thank my new mother-in-law, Dorothy, who has been such an inspiration for my wellness journey. She is proof that age is just a number when you have the right mindset and the right supplements. The camera focused on Dorothy. I felt my wife's hand tighten around mine. Then Melissa held out the microphone to me, expecting a warm, emotional tribute she could turn into content. The live stream counter showed over 75,000 viewers watching live. I stood up. I took the microphone. I cleared my throat. Thank you, Melissa. Before we go any further, I think everyone here, and everyone watching at home, needs to know a little more about the person we're celebrating today. Her smile flickered. Just for a second, I connected my phone to the venue's projection system. The first image that appeared on the large screen at the front of the room was the footage from the hidden camera in our bathroom. Silent. No narration needed. Just the image of Melissa, clippers in hand, shaving Dorothy's head while recording the whole thing on her own phone. The room went completely still, and then it erupted, gasps. People standing. Someone behind me whispered, "Oh my God," and couldn't seem to stop saying it. The livestream comments exploded with shock and outrage. The viewer count jumped to 100,000 in what felt like seconds. This morning, I said into the microphone, keeping my voice measured and clear, my daughter-in-law drugged my wife, shaved off hair that my wife had been growing for 30 years, and filmed it as content for her social media channel. But that is not the worst of what she has done. The next slides showed the false testimonials. Dorothy's name and face used to sell supplements she had never taken. Elderly women from across the country who had spent hundreds and thousands of dollars based on lies attributed to my wife. Melissa has been running a financial fraud operation using my wife's image and reputation without her consent. In the past year alone, she made over $80,000 from this scheme, and she's been teaching other people how to do the same thing to their own elderly relatives. I clicked to the screenshot of the coaching program. $299 a month. Course materials teaching influencers how to find vulnerable family members and turn their pain into content. The room was not a wedding anymore. It was a courtroom. If you're watching this and you have an elderly parent or grandparent, please share this story. They need to know the signs. You need to know the signs. Keep listening all the way to the end. Marcus stepped forward. Dad, please, not today. Not like this. I looked at my son, this man I had raised, and I felt such grief for him. Such terrible, specific grief. Because I had done everything I knew how to do, and somehow he had still ended up here. Your wife committed multiple felonies against my wife. I said quietly, but into the microphone, so every person in that room and every person watching online could hear it clearly. Elder abuse, wire fraud, identity theft, drugging someone without their consent. The only question I have for you, Marcus, is whether you were simply too afraid to stop her or whether you were part of this from the beginning. That was when James walked in. The arrest 2 officers from the state attorney's office followed him through the doors of that reception hall. James stopped in the center of the room, where every camera could see him, and he spoke clearly. Melissa Whitfield, you are under arrest for elder abuse, wire fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit financial crimes against vulnerable adults. The live stream was still running. Melissa's own camera, her own audience, her own platform. 150,000 people watched live as the handcuffs clicked into place. I thought about Margaret, 73 years old, spending her fixed income on supplements that did nothing. I thought about Ruth, 71, whose health had gotten worse. I thought about Dorothy on her knees on our bathroom floor, shaking silently, her hair scattered around her like something sacred that had been thrown away, and I felt something release in my chest. Not joy, not triumph, just the particular quiet of a thing being made right. Dorothy and I left before they finished processing the scene. We had done what we came to do. We walked out into the cool afternoon air, her hand in mine, and we didn't say anything for a long time. But what happened in the days and months that followed that arrest changed far more than just our family story. It sent ripples through an entire industry. And it started conversations in law enforcement offices, courtrooms, and living rooms all across the country. I'll tell you all of it. We're almost at the end. Stay with me. The wedding video, the one showing Melissa's arrest in real time, was shared thousands of times by the end of that same night. By the next morning, it was on every major news network. The headline that kept appearing was, "Social media influencer arrested at own wedding for elder abuse." It became the story of that week. And then the next week. And the week after that. What I hadn't anticipated was how many other families came forward. Within days of the story breaking, Adult Protective Services was receiving calls from people all over the country describing nearly identical situations. Elderly relatives being used as content without consent. Fake testimonials. Financial exploitation disguised as family closeness. Melissa wasn't unique. She was just the first one to get caught in a way that couldn't be buried. The FBI opened a task force specifically to investigate what they were calling family exploitation schemes in the social media space. Melissa's coaching program became the foundation of that investigation. Several of her paying clients were charged alongside her. The sentencing 3 months after the wedding, Melissa was sentenced to 2 years in prison and ordered to pay $125,000 in restitution to her victims. The MLM company she had worked with shut down entirely after the state attorney's investigation revealed it was a pyramid scheme that had specifically targeted elderly women. All of her social media accounts were permanently banned. The coaching program was dissolved, and everyone who had paid for it received their money back through a class action settlement. Marcus pleaded guilty to accessory charges. He lost his real estate license. He received 18 months of probation and 500 hours of community service, all of it at senior centers. The judge said, without much subtlety, that it seemed appropriate for him to spend time actually helping the population he and his wife had been exploiting. That I haven't spoken to him much since. Some wounds are too specific to close quickly. Maybe they'll change someday. I hope it does. He is still my son. Melissa filed for divorce from prison. She received half of nothing, since every asset they had was seized for restitution. That Dorothy, my wife's hair, is growing back slowly. She keeps it shorter now. She says it feels like a fresh start. The trauma took months to fully surface and even longer to begin healing. There were mornings when she sat at the breakfast table in silence for long stretches, and I would just sit across from her and hold space for whatever she needed. But Dorothy is not a woman who stays broken for long. She began speaking at community centers about recognizing financial exploitation and social media scams. She stood in front of groups of seniors and said, with her voice steady and her chin up, "This happened to me, and I want you to know the signs so it doesn't happen to you." Every time I watch her do that, I had to work very hard not to cry in public. I am not always successful. Margaret, Carol, and Ruth, the 3 women I called during my investigation, all received their refunds, and then some through the settlement. They also joined Dorothy on her speaking circuit. Ruth, 71 years old, stood at a microphone in front of 200 people and said, "I was embarrassed to admit I had been fooled. But embarrassment is how these people stay safe. The only way we stop them is by talking about it." She brought the house down. I have never been more proud of a group of people I had only just met. Dorothy and Ruth meet for coffee twice a week now. They laugh, apparently, about Melissa's miracle supplements. There is something so deeply human and so deeply resilient about that. About finding laughter on the other side of something that tried to diminish you. What I want you to take from this: people ask me sometimes whether I regret what I did. Whether I regret exposing all of it so publicly at a wedding in front of everyone while 150,000 people watched live. No, I don't. Not for a single moment. When someone preys on people they're supposed to love, when they use trust as a weapon and call it family, there have to be consequences. Real ones. Not quiet conversations. Not second chances before the first wrong is even addressed. Consequences that my job was never to protect my son from the results of his own choices. My job was to protect the woman who stood beside me for 35 years and who deserved every ounce of the dignity that had been stripped from her on a cold bathroom floor while strangers watched online and cheered. The most dangerous predators are not strangers. They are the people who sit at your dinner table and call you family while they are planning your exploitation. They count on silence. They count on you loving them too much to hold them accountable. They are wrong about that. Or at least, this should be doubt if you're listening to this right now and you recognize something in this story, something in your own family, or in the family of someone you love, please do not stay quiet. Document everything. Call Adult Protective Services. Call your local elder abuse hotline. And remember that protecting vulnerable people is always more important than keeping comfortable secrets. Tell me in the comments. And if you've dealt with something similar, share your story. You are not alone. Subscribe for more stories about standing your ground and reclaiming your life. This community exists for people who refuse to be silent, for people who chose love over fear and truth over comfort, and who came out the other side stronger than the people who tried to use them. Dorothy is making dinner right now. I can hear her in the kitchen, humming something low and familiar. Her hair curls softly against the back of her neck. She looks up sometimes and catches me watching her, and she gives me the same smile she has given me for 35 years. We are okay. We are more than okay. We are done being anyone's easy targets. And somewhere, I hope, there's a woman watching this for the first time and recognizing something she thought was just her family's strange private dysfunction and understanding that it has a name, and that name is abuse, and that she doesn't have to accept it. That is what justice looks like in the real world. Not a perfect ending. Not everything restored to what it was. But light where there was darkness, and words where there was silence, and one more family that knows they're stronger than anyone who ever tried to use them. Thank you for listening all the way to the end. It means more than you know.